Well, certainly they've talked about how strict their measures are within the Olympic bubble and how they're testing athletes every day, others related to them, they're tracking contacts close to them, isolating, quarantining people. But the problem is that the general public, I think, is very weary of kind of going in and out of these quasi lockdowns. We've never had the kind of strict lockdowns that I believe you've had in Australia or in the United States or in England. But people keep being asked, please don't go out. The restaurants are asked to close at 8. They have to stop serving alcohol. And people are just getting tired of it. And they see the Olympics are here. And they feel like, well, if the Olympics could be here, we can also be out and about. And I think that sort of combination has led to this rise in cases to a record high level, as you mentioned, in Tokyo. There's also a relatively low level of vaccination in Japan compared to other G7 countries. So there are a number of factors that have led to this situation.
How are hospitals coping at the moment?
Well, there are warnings now in Tokyo, literally, where they're saying that hospitals are starting to turn people away for non-COVID treatment and that they're worried that they're coming under pressure. An advisor to the health ministry committee on COVID today warned that if hospitals get more overstretched, they may have to consider canceling the Paralympics. So I think people are really, really concerned.
Do you think stricter measures might be introduced? What have authorities said about that?
They are talking about introducing stricter measures in some surrounding prefectures, but Tokyo is already under a so-called state of emergency. So there's not much more they can do short of passing some new law that allows them to implement an actual mandated lockdown. Japan doesn't have the kind of legal mechanism to mandate a lockdown, so everything depends on requests. The population has, for a while, been pretty compliant, staying in when they're asked to do so. But I think, as I said before, people are getting tired, so they're kind of running out of policy measures at this point.
You mentioned the vaccine rollout has been slow, but what is the overall strategy? Have they concentrated perhaps on vaccinating those in the Tokyo area, given that there is a surge in cases there?
So it hasn't been so much geographic as age-based, although that being said, they have opened, I think it was a little over a month ago that they opened these very large vaccination centers, both in Tokyo and I think it was in Osaka. And those were run both by medical professionals, but they also brought in military medical professionals to try to speed things up. So in Tokyo, the demographic of 65 and over is largely at least gotten their first shot, and many of them already got their second shots. The problem is that a lot of young people have not had the chance to get vaccinated. And so when you dig deep into the numbers of the record high cases, today, for example, they were over 3,000, and about 1,000 of those were people in their 20s. And they're the people least likely to be vaccinated at the moment.
And with the surge in cases, you mentioned that the Paralympics might be affected. How about the Olympics? Do you think there could be possible disruption in the coming days?
Not that we know of. I mean, they've been pretty adamant that, every day we have these press briefings from Tokyo 2020, the organizing committee, as well as the International Olympic Committee. And they're insisting that they have everything under control. As you pointed out, for example, today, they reported 16 new cases out of the sort of the Olympic bubble. It's not just the Olympic Village, but anyone associated with the Olympics who had tested positive. And there were 16 cases. And they point out that's out of tens of thousands of people who are affiliated with the Olympics. They keep sort of touting the fact that their numbers are very low. It's not entirely clear to everybody how well that they're implementing all of those testing measures. I think the athletes are, in fact, being tested pretty well, but it's not necessarily clear that all the media, the contractors, the volunteers, or the staff are being tested as rigorously as they could be, or that contact tracing is happening as efficiently as it could be. So I think there are some worries that what is being reported is slightly underrepresenting what's actually happening.
And Motoko, on to Olympics news itself. How have the Japanese public reacted to Naomi Osaka bowing out of the Games?
Well, it was a stunner for everybody, right? We were all expecting her. I think, there was a great hope that Naomi Osaka would be not only the face of the Olympics by having carry the final torch, being the final torchbearer, but also take home gold for Japan. And so that when she went out at a pretty early round, I think people were really shocked by that. But then on top of that, I think there has been a lot of skepticism, certainly expressed on social media, even before the Olympics, when Naomi Osaka pulled out of the French Open and had talked very openly about her mental health conditions. I think there were a lot of people in Japan that basically didn't really believe it, thought that she was making an excuse. She was attacked a lot on social media. And this has been raised as a concern among some people who are in charge of gender equality for Tokyo 2020, that she was attacked unduly, in part because she's a woman and a woman of color. And then again, when she suffered this defeat, there were quite a lot of attacks on social media, some kind of questioning her identity and even her legitimacy to represent Japan in the Olympics.
And just finally, Motoko, ahead of the Beijing Winter Games next year, there's already been controversy. What's the IOC had to say about this?
Right. There was somebody who asked a question today, and it's not the first time that it's been asked, obviously, is whether or not the IOC has considered the fact that by participating and endorsing the Beijing Olympics, that they would basically be forcing both their athletes and the IOC itself to be complicit in genocide. And the answer we got today was very much, we want to remain neutral. That's not our business. The IOC is in charge of hosting Olympic Games and bringing people together through sport. We have to remain politically neutral. And as for, as the spokesman talked about it, other things, that's for governments, not for the IOC. And I think a lot of people were not satisfied with that answer.
Motoko Rich, thank you so much for updating us.
Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you.